What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Shinobi Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. A story where Naruto is betrayed and banished. But destiny has bigger plans for him. From exile to emperor, this is the journey of power, strategy, and love. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Naruto Rebuilt the Uzumaki clan with a harem of Anko, Taiyoya, Kurenai, Mabui, Yugao, Tsunade, and Fame Kyuubi, Part 1. If you enjoy intense Naruto stories and epic world building, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now sit back, relax, and let the legend begin. Konoha was the shinobi center of the Land of Fire. It was a village that could lay claim to many things, its Hokage who have watched over the village since its beginning, lively and happy citizens, and its academy that trained the future generation of shinobi. Walking out of the convenient story closest to her home was one of the many shinobi hopefuls who attended the academy, a plastic bag holding her purchases hanging in her right hand. It wasn't anything to write home about. Her parents spent a lot of time working, so usually it was just her for Super S. Or she usually just picked out on snacks or heated up the occasional pre-made meal. She was a rather attractive girl for her age, sporting purple hair that was cut off at chin length save for the bangs on the left side of her face that stretched down to the slight bulges of her B. Her attire consisted of a dark blue blouse that had a yellow and pink vertically stripped cloth covering the front that she had tied around her neck and waist. To cover her long legs she wore a red skirt that nearly reached her knees and dark blue shinobi sandals that came up to her mid-shin. As the sun lowered and the blue sky began to change to a vibrant orange, she shut her brain off and let her legs carry her along the same path home she'd been using for years. She didn't quite know what it was, but life had become so boring. Every day it was the same thing. She got up in the morning, got ready for school, tried to stay awake through class, hung out with her friends, and then headed home to repeat it all again the next day. Coming to an intersection, this girl who found herself trapped in a route encountered something to push her out of it. With a thud, the girl was on her back, staring up at the clear sky above as the contents of her bag rolled across the ground. Oh, the girl hissed out as she pushed herself into a sitting position with her right arm while rubbing the back of her head with her other arm. Glancing around, the first thing she noticed was the food around of her, half of which had fallen out of their containers and spilled all over the ground. Shit, the girl cussed as she scrambled to salvage what she could. Hearing someone moving behind her, she spun around to grab whoever it was and pulled them to eye level as she stood on her knees. Hey jackass, that was my super. How are you going to make up for it, huh? She shouted as she got in the guy's face, only for her eyes to widen as she stared into blue eyes. Those blue eyes, that blonde hair and whisker marks, she knew who this was. Hell, everyone knew who he was. He's the kid everyone talked about with hushed words. As the blonde started to apologize, the girl let out a quiet sigh as she pushed him back to the ground. Forget it, she breathed out as she got to her feet. Nothing good would come of this if she stayed any longer. She'll just head back to the shop and get some more food. Pushing himself up, the blonde was ready to yell at the girl for pushing him when he saw her walking away. Is she really going to make that big of a fuss and then just walk away, like nothing had happened? Why don't you come to my house? The words flowed out of his mouth before he even thought about them. At first he was sure that saying that was a mistake, that she's just laugh at him for asking, but he simply stopped walking away. After a pause, the girl looked over her shoulder. And why would I do that? The tone in her voice, it didn't come off as mocking or have any anger behind it, but rather, she was curious. With a bit of surprise and hope, a wide grin formed on the blonde's face as he folded his arms behind his head. My mom's a really good cook. I'm sure you'll love it. The blonde told her. Thinking back on it, it was probably a stupid reason, but the prospect of having a home-cooked meal after so long was simply irresistible too. She told herself that one visit wouldn't hurt, and now, well over a year later, she was in the blonde's room watching him pack for a protection mission his team had been assigned. With a sigh, Naruto paused in placing the supplies he had laid out on his bed into his backpack. Amy, it's kind of hard to pack like this, the blonde told the girl whose arms were wrapped around his neck. Don't care, Amy told him as she pressed herself into his back further. He was going to be gone for weeks guarding some bridge builder. She wasn't going to miss out on the few hours she had before he left. Doesn't your team have any missions today? Naruto asked as he started filling his bag again. Nuzzling her chin into the top of his head, Amy noted that holding him like this was getting difficult. She'd always been taller than him, but luckily he was closing the distance. A few more months and he'll probably be taller than her. Ishiko-sensei gave us the day off because her love life sucks, Amy told him. After having a woman like Ishiko for sensei for nearly a year now, her, Kasumi, and Fuki came to expect seeing her show up with tear-stained cheeks every month or so and telling them about how she was stood up, or she was dumped, or the guy was married the whole time. Usually they sat around and comforted her for an hour or two before they got the day off whenever it happened. Ah, Naruto responded. It must be tough, but still, better than having a sensei that's always late. Hey, Naruto, Amy began as she took her head off of his and rested it on his shoulder. When the blonde turned his head to look at her, she quickly leaned into place, a quick kiss on his lips. Leaning her head back, she grinned as the faint blush on his cheeks. Consider that a good luck charm. After getting everything packed, Naruto was seen off by Amy and his mother as he went to meet up with the others at the main gate and then ultimately heading out for the Land of Waves. As the day dragged on, the 4 Shinobi plus bridge builders spent a good portion of the walk in silence. That is until Naruto's pink-haired teammate wanted to ask their charge something. Say, Mr. Tazuna, Sakura spoke up in order to get the man's attention. Next to her was the third and final genin of their squad, Sasuke Uchiha. Next to him was their sensei, Kakashi Hatake, with the bridge builder next to him, leaving Naruto walking a few steps in front of the group. What is it? Tazuna asked, sounding almost irritated. Your country is the Land of Waves, right? The Pinkett asked. Yeah, what of it? Tazuna questioned, turning to her sensei. Kakashi-sensei, there are shinobi in that country as well, aren't there? The girl asked. No, there are no shinobi in the Land of Waves, Kakashi told her. But in other countries, there are hidden villages, each with their own customs and cultures, where shinobi reside. To the people of this continent, the existence of shinobi villages means strength, military strength. In other words, that's how they protect themselves and maintain the balance with neighboring countries. The shinobi villagers are not controlled by any government, they're independent and have equal status. Now a small island like the Land of Waves has natural protection from the sea, so there's no need for a shinobi village, Kakashi was explaining when Naruto interjected. What about Uzushiogakure? The blonde asked as he looked over his shoulder, getting odd looks from Sakura and Tazuna. Uzushiogakure was one of the first shinobi villages to be founded. They used the surrounding whirlpools that gave their nation its name to train and develop ninjutsu safely away from the outside world. Uzushiogakure was the only major settlement to be established there, but unfortunately Uzushiogakure no longer exists, Kakashi said, leaving it at that. He was sure that Kushina would have already told him about the village she was born in and didn't want to risk opening up old wounds by going on long than needed. What do you mean it doesn't exist? What happened? Sakura asked, unsurprisingly curious about this new information, even if Kakashi wanted to avoid the topic. Well, you see, Kakashi begins, trying to figure out the best way to tactfully explain it when Sasuke answered for H. It was wiped out in the last Great War, the young Uchiha said. Not what Kakashi was hoping for, but at least he didn't have to say it. What? Wiped out? Sakura exclaimed as her attention darted to the raven-haired teen next to her. The Uzumaki clan that first founded the village had strong ties to Konoha. Even though Uzushio hadn't taken part in the conflict, the other nations feared what would happen if they sided with our village and entered the war, so they took action before that could happen and leaving the village in ruin. Sasuke explained. Uzumaki, the Pinkett repeated before her eyes widened. You don't mean? Sakura went on as her head turned to stare at her blonde teammate's back. Feeling her gaze on him, Naruto said, my mom was born there. Hearing that made the Pinkett feel like shit for pushing the topic. When she tried to apologize, Naruto just shook his head before looking over his shoulder. You don't have to apologize, it happened a long time ago, the blonde told her with a grin. She still felt bad about it, but for now Sakura listened to the blonde. After that the group returned to traveling in silence, albeit with a slightly uncomfortable atmosphere around them. As they moved further away from the village they passed by a small puddle, surely a common sight, though it did catch Kakashi's attention. They passed by without any problem, but after their backs were turned the small pool of water warped and rose until two figures clad in gas masks and sporting two large clawed gauntlets between them, one having it on his right hand while the other wore it on his left. With train speed the first shinobi threw his companion at the group as a long spike chain shot out to connect their gauntlets. Before a normal human could react they had the chain wrapped tightly around Kakashi's body, and with a swift tug from both of them the chain tore through the man like this. UE paper. As Kakashi's remain fell to the ground, kicking up a bloody cloud, Sakura let out a startled cry as she stumbled back, and Naruto let out a cry for his fallen sensei. Just as the blonde was going to rush over in some vain hope that Kakashi was alright, the two assassins popped up behind chuckling as they narrowed their eyes. "Now it's your turn," one of them said as they moved to entangle Naruto like they had Kakashi. Reaching for his weapon's pouch, the blonde moved to jump back, hoping he'd get out of their range before it was too late when Sasuke jumped into the action, unleashing GA Shuriken that pinned the chain to a nearby tree before following it with a kunai to pin his first thrown weapon into the trunk as well. As Naruto brought his kunai out he watched as Sasuke landed on the gauntlets that were now keeping their owners at bay. Placing his hands on the gauntlets the Uchiha kicked out with his feet, using the trap chain to his advantage to add even more of an impact as his feet slammed into the pair's faces. With their chain hindering them now they opted to detach themselves from it and split up, one of them rushing for Asuna while the other went for Naruto. "Honoka, Honoka," Kushina called out as she wandered around the residence. Coming to a stop at the garden at the back of her home she placed her hands on her hips and let out a huff. Where could that girl be? Seeing Amy tossing kunai as a target pin to the large cherry tree, the red-haired woman called her over. Halting her arm before the next blade left her hand, the teen looked over to see the woman waving her over. Amy flicked it in the tree's general direction before Rooney NG over to the woman. "What do you need?" Amy asked before she came to a stop in front of the woman. "Honoka, I haven't seen her since this morning." "You haven't seen her, have you?" Kushina asked. "Oh, she went with Naruto," Amy easily answered, getting a surprised look from Naruto's mother. What the shinobi who had targeted Tazuna grunted out, his body being restrained by golden chains just before he was about to pierce through the genin standing between him and the old man with his metal claws. His partner wasn't faring much better as he stared down the person responsible for stopping them. Between him and Naruto was a woman with dark eyes and long, straight red hair tied into a thick braid which she wore with a white band. Her clothes consisted of a purple, sleeveless kimono blouse with yellow trimmings held close by a traditional obi with a long, streaming bow tied to it, having mesh armor underneath, and wearing a short white skirt with nothing covering her legs or feet. Honoka? Naruto questioned as he found himself staring at the woman's back. Since when and how was she here? Looking over her shoulder the teen gave him a warm smile and a quick nod. "I suppose I should thank you for that," Kakashi said, directing everyone's attention up to the tree branch he was kneeling on. "Kakashi-sensei." But Sakura was surprised as she from the man to where his remains should be only to see a pile of sliced wood. "A substitution," the pinkett commented with a few blinks as she put two and two together. Jumping down the silver-haired shinobi began to casually walk over to the group, noticing the scowl Honoka was giving him. "I would have stepped in if they needed me, promise," Kakashi told the girl with a smile, even if it wasn't obvious through his cloth mask. However, his response didn't seem to change her mood as she jerked her head to the side, her scowl still in place. "Oh well," turning his attention to the bridge builder. "Tazuna," Kakashi said, getting a startled reaction from the man as Tazuna began sweating bullets. "We need to talk," Kakashi told him. "How did you know about our ambush?" one of the enemy shinobi asked after the pair was tied to a tree. "A puddle, on a clear day when it hasn't rained in weeks." Kakashi answered with a question of his own. "In that case why'd you leave it to the genin to do the fighting?" Tazuna asked the Junin. "I could have taken them out quickly, but then I'd have learned nothing. I had to know who their target was, and what they were after," Kakashi said as he stared at the bridge builder from the corner of his eye. What are you getting at? Tazuna questioned. This, Kakashi said as he turned to face the man. I wanted to know if they were after us, shinobi attacking. Shinobi. Or, if they were attacking you, the master bridge builder. When you put in your request you asked for standard protection, from robbers and highwaymen. You didn't say there were shinobi looking for you, hunting you down. If we knew this it would be AB rank mission or higher. Our task was to simply get you to your destination and protect you while you completed your bridge. If we knew we'd be fielding attacks from enemy shinobi we would have staffed differently and charged for the price of AB mission. Apparently you have your reasons, but lying to us is unacceptable. We are now beyond the scope of this mission, Kakashi told the man. As Kakashi spoke Tazuna's head lowered, hiding his face behind the white straw hat he wore. He knew that he had lied to them, but what choice did he have? If we just leave him like this he'll be killed. We can't let that happen. Tazuna heard the blonde kid say. With determination in his eyes like that Kakashi found it hard to outright refuse to continue the mission. With a sigh the Junin told the group, we'll deliver Tazuna to his home as per the mission and then determine from there if we'll continue. As the blonde cheered that the mission wasn't over yet Kakashi redirected a hard look at Tazuna. I'll expect an explanation by the time we arrive. Despite the chill that ran down his spine Tazuna was still grateful that they weren't simply leaving him for dead. The fog was dense as the group was being ferried to the land of waves aboard a small fishing boat. The man transporting them, a friend of Tazuna's, had cut the engine and was rowing them the rest of the way. At the front of the small boat sat Honoka staring out into the deep mist. Since she'd suddenly appeared to save them the woman had traveled alongside the group. Out of everyone Sakura had become the most interested in the teen, the fact that she had yet to utter a single word piqued the Pinket's curiosity. Sensei, Sakura began in a hushed tone as she turned to Kakashi. When he turned his one visible eye to her she continued, who is that woman? It seems like her and Naruto know each other. It probably would have been better to ask Naruto about this but Kakashi figured she didn't want to pry unnecessarily into the blonde's past, especially after the conversation he had earlier. Kushina, Naruto's mother, sometimes takes him out of the village to travel. During their last trip a few months back they encountered Honoka on a strange island. There was nothing for her there, so she came back to the village with them. Kakashi gave the short version of events. No point in getting his students' head filled with spirits and experimental summoning creatures while they were on a mission. The bridge isn't far now. Our destination's just up ahead, the land of waves, the boat owner told them. Moments later the sight of the massive bridge drifted into view even with the mist that surrounded them. It was truly a sight to behold. Woo, it's huge, Naruto exclaimed as he marveled at the structure. Unsurprisingly the boat owner chastised the blonde for the outburst. They were after all traveling in silence for a reason. Naruto instantly covered his mouth with his hands with an apologetic expression followed shortly after with a smile from Honoka as she patted his head reassuringly. Tazuna, Kakashi began as he turned to the bridge builder. Before we reach the pier I want to ask you something. When the man remained silent Kakashi went on, the men who are after you, I need to know why. If you don't tell us, I'm afraid I'll have to end this mission when we drop you ashore. No more putting it off then. With all eyes on him Tazuna began, I have no choice but to tell you. No, I want you to know the truth. Like you said, this is beyond the original scope of the mission. The one who is after my life is a very short man who casts a very long and deadly shadow. A deadly shadow? Who is it? Kakashi asked. You know him, or at least I'm sure you've heard his name before. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world, the shipping magnate Geto, Tazuna says, surprising Kakashi. Geto, of Geto Transport. He's a business leader, everyone knows him, Kakashi says. Geto is a very powerful tycoon, a famous company that's for sure, but below the surface with the same ruthless methods he uses to take over businesses and nations he sells drugs and contraband using gangs and shinobi. It was 1 year ago when Geto set his sights on the land of waves. He came to our island and used his wealth to take total control of our transport and shipping. Anyone who tried to stand in his way simply disappeared. In an island nation a man who controls the sea controls everything, finance, government, our very lives. But there's one thing he fears, the bridge. When it is complete it'll join us to the land and that will break his control. I am the bridge builder, Tazuna tells them. So that's it. Since you are building this bridge you are standing in this gangster's way, Sakura summed up. That mean the guys we fought in the forest were working for Gato, Sasuke added. I don't understand, if you knew he was dangerous, knew he'd send shinobi to eliminate you, why did you hide that from us? Kakashi asked the bridge builder. Because the land of waves is a small, impoverished nation. Even our nobles have little money. The common people who are building this bridge, they can't pay for an A or B ranked mission. It's too expensive. If you end the mission when you're dropped me ashore there will be no bridge, they'll assassinate me before I reach home, Tazuna tells them. Glancing up the old man then said, but don't feel bad about that. Of course my sweet little grandson will be upset, he'll cry, Granddad. I want my granddad, using his best, little kid voice, in regard to what his grandson would say. Oh, and my daughter will condemn the shinobi of Konoha, denouncing and blaming you for abandoning her father and living her life in sorrow, Tazuna tells them. Ah well, it's not your fault. Forget it, the man adds. Turning to one another the shinobi all shared the same guilt-ridden expression. Well, I guess we have no choice, we'll have to keep guarding you, Kakashi says as he turns back to Tazuna and shrugs his shoulders. Oh, I'm very grateful, Tazuna sincerely says while on the inside he was grinning like a madman for getting them to continue the mission. A little while later brought the group to a large stone wall built to break up large waves before they could reach the shore. As they went the boat slipped into one of the many tunnels built into the wall. Once they'd passed through they were met with the sight of a town built around and partially over an estuary with many trees growing out of the water. Apparently the fog hadn't crept to the side of the wide stone wall they'd passed through as the sun was shining and they could see without restriction. Once they were on dry land the boat owner told Tazuna to be careful before starting up his motor and driving off. Tazuna lived outside the town, so even though they were finally in the land of waves they still had to walk to a different part of the island. Though at least it wasn't too far away. The next shinobi they send won't be Chunin, they'll be Junin, elite shinobi with deadly skills Kakashi thought to himself as left the town. Scanning the immediate area the man's lone eye landed on the back of Honoka's head. Even if she wasn't supposed to be here her presence helped relieve a lot of stress he'd otherwise have. Her skills may prove invaluable on this mission. As they were nearing Tazuna's home Honoka walked up to the blonde. From behind Sakura watched them with raised eyebrows as the red-haired teen leaned in closer to the blonde, their shoulders brushing up against each other every now and then. What are they doing? Don't they realize we're supposed to be on the lookout for enemy shinobi right now? Sakura thought to herself, oddly more irritated by the display more than she should be. A quick glance to the side had her letting out a sigh as her eyes landed on Sasuke. If only me and Sasuke could be like that, the pink kid thought to herself, picturing her and the Uchiha walking side by side. Just as Sakura was pulling herself out of her thoughts her blonde teammate reached into the weapon pouch wrapped around his leg. Pulling a kunai out Naruto turned to the side and tossed the weapon into a patch of bushes along the path and putting the others on edge in the process. After a moment the blonde straightened himself out and relaxed his body with a confused look on his face. Did I miss? The blonde thought aloud. Honoka let him know that they were being followed but still, you'd think he'd get a reaction if he tossed a kunai at the guy. If nothing else the blonde's question seemed to kill the tension he'd just made. As the others were grumbling or shaking their heads at the blonde Kakashi went over to investigate. Pushing the brush aside the Junin found a startled white rabbit below the kunai that was now embedded into a tree. Naruto, look what you did, Sakura angrily told the blonde when she saw the poor bunny. For Naruto's part he immediately felt bad for scaring the thing half to death and rushed over to it, picking it up and cradling it while apologizing. Kakashi however had a different reaction, a much different reaction. That's a snow rabbit, but the color. They only have white fur during winter, when the days are short and there's little sunlight, the silver-haired shinobi thought as he looked around at the bright forest around them. This rabbit was raised indoors away from the light which can only be for one purpose, a substitution jutsu. Looking over to Honoka he saw the woman on guard while the other were focused on the rabbit. So they're already here, Kakashi thought to himself. Hidden in the shadows of the forest, a tall, muscular man with short spiky black hair watched the group. Similar to Kakashi's black mask, this man's lower face was covered with white bandages. The headband he wore sideways displayed the markings of Kirigakure, marking him as a shinobi originating from that village. He wore no shirt, with the only thing covering his chest being a belt that supported the massive sword on his back. The clothes he did wear consisted of baggy pants with a striped pattern and white arm and leg warmers with a blotchy brown pattern on them. No wonder the Demon brothers failed in their mission, the man thought as he reached up to grab the handle of his weapon. It's the copy shinobi from Konoha, Kakashi of the Sharingan, the man thought to himself as his eyes came to focus on the silver-haired man. Feeling an oncoming attack, Kakashi spun on his heel while telling everyone to get down. From the trees the massive sword of their enemy was spinning right for them, aimed to take off their heads. As everyone ducked to avoid the blade, Honoka rushed to the center of the group, golden chains erupted from her back. Shooting out in front of her, the half-dozen chains formed a quick barrier between the group and the sword, sending the blade tumbling back. Jumping into the open, the sword's owner grabbed its handle before it could crash against the dirt. That technique. So you were in Uzumaki then. To think there are still some of you left in the world, the man commented as he and Honoka stared each other down. Well, if it isn't Zabuza Momochi, rogue shinobi of Kirigakure, Kakashi remarked as the group got back to their feet. Turning his attention from Honoka back to Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan. Did I get that right? Zabuza said. After hearing Kakashi being linked to the Sharingan, Sasuke's eyes immediately darted over to his sensei. It's too bad, but you'll have to hand over the old man, Zabuza told him as Kakashi's hand came up to grab the headband he had covering his left eye. Quick, Manji formation, Honoka, assist them in guarding the bridge builder, Kakashi told them before lifting up his headband to reveal a vertical scar running over his left eye that possessed the Sharingan. At his command, the three genin rushed to Tazuna and took up formation, with Honoka coming up behind the bridge builder and redeploying her chakra chains to set up a protective barrier around them. Well, looks like I get to see the Sharingan, as well as the renowned special Sakura of the Uzumaki clan in action. This is an honor, Zabuza quipped as he saw the red eye and barrier of golden chains. Sharingan, what is it? Sakura asked, her curiosity getting the better of her, with Sasuke being the one to answer her. Sharingan, a rare dojutsu. The user of this visual jutsu can instantly see and comprehend any ninjutsu, genjutsu, or taijutsu and reflect the attack back on the enemy. However, there's more to the Sharingan than that, much more, Sasuke explained as his mind went back to his clan. Among the few you lived through the clan's internal war and remain in the village, only his mother and a small handful of now retired shinobi posse a fully developed Sharingan. So why does Kakashi have one? You got it right, boy, but you've only scratched the surface. The Sharingan can analyze an opponent's technique and then copy it to the smallest detail, Zabuza said as a thick fog started to roll in. As for you, Junin, in the assassination unit of Kirigakure we had a standing order to destroy you on Sai. Your profile was in our bingo book, it called you the man who's copied over 1,000 jutsu. Kakashi, the copy shinobi, Zabuza told him before vanishing from sight. Moments later Sakura called out that he was standing on the nearby lake. With his arms held up in the appropriate hand signs, the rogue shinobi called upon his stable technique. What a style, hidden mist jutsu, the man called out before the thick fog grew even more dense and his form disappeared. He'll come after me first, Kakashi told his team. But, who is he? Sakura questioned. Zabuza Momochi, the ex-leader of Kirigaka's assassination unit. He's a master of the silent killing technique, Kakashi told them. Silent? Naruto asked. As the name suggests, it happens in an instant, without sound or warning of any kind. It's so fast you pass from this life without realizing what has happened. The Sharingan cannot fully neutralize it, so don't lower your guard, Kakashi told them. Even with Honoka's barrier there's no way of knowing if it'll hold out against this opponent, not until it's too late. Well, if we fail we only lose our lives, Kakashi made a dark joke to lighten the mood, which worked despite Sakura questioning how he could say something like that. The mist is getting thicker and thicker, Naruto commented as the distance they could see shrunk more and more. The land of waves is surrounded by ocean. The swirling mists are ever present, Tazuna said as the mist grew so thick that they could no longer see Kakashi. From the mist, Zabuza's voice could be heard calling out to them. 8 points: larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Now, which will be my kill point? The man said, sending a terrifying chill through the group. Bringing his hands together, Kakashi let loose a surge of chakra, dispersing a good portion of the mist and allowing his team to see him again. As the man did this, 2 chakra-infused kunai came from the still lingering mist to collide with Honoka's barrier, testing its strength. As the weapons fell harmlessly to the ground, Zabuza spoke up once again. It said, a master of the art can create a barrier that no man can break. I wonder, do you possess that kind of skill? When the words reached the group, Zabuza dashed out from the mist, the Kubikiribocho held tightly in his hands as he swung the massive blade into Honoka's barrier. Under the weight and power of Zabuza's attack, the chains buckled and sparked as the barrier strained itself but refused to yield to Zabuza's might. Wincing from the strain, Honoka redoubled her efforts as Kakashi rushed over to take on Zabuza. Drawing a kunai, Kakashi shot straight for the assassin, thrusting the blade into his unprotected abdomen. Soon after, several splashes could be heard as water escaped from the wound. With a cry from Naruto, the Junin was alerted to a second Zabuza behind him. With Kubikiribocho ready to kill once again, the first Zabuza reverted back to water as the other swung his blade. Die! Zabuza shouted as he cut right through Kakashi. However, what fell to the ground after was not a corpse but another puddle of water. The water clone jutsu, Zabuza thought with widened eyes. It can't be. ... Even in the mist he saw through my illusion and copied it in an instant, Zabuza concluded as he felt the cold metal of Kakashi's weapon press up against his neck. Don't move, Kakashi ordered as he stood behind the rogue shinobi with a kunai ready to slice through his neck. It's over. You're finished, the silver-haired Junin told the man. When Zabuza simply began to chuckle at his statement, Kakashi was put on edge. Finished? You really don't get it, do you? Zabuza questioned. Your technique is nothing but a crass imitation. I'll never be defeated by a mere copycat like you, Zabuza said as Kakashi glared at the man. With a few more chuckles, Zabuza added, but you are full of surprises though. You'd already copied my water clone jutsu by the time I launched my attack. Very skillfully executed, leaving your clone out in the open while you hid in the mist, waiting for me to make my move. Nice try. ... Zabuza said before another one appeared behind Kakashi. But I'm not that easy to fool, Zabuza said as the one in front of Kakashi turned to water. With split-second timing, Kakashi ducked under Zabuza's attack, however that didn't mean he was safe. The Kubikiribocho continued in its path until coming behind Zabuza and planting itself into the ground. Using the weapon as a perch to amplify the impact of his next strike, Zabuza spun quickly and with a single kick he sent Kakashi flying into the lake. Firmly grabbing the handle once more, Zabuza rushed in for another attack but came to a stop just before hitting the water. As Kakashi went sailing through the air, he dropped iron spikes on the ground, but they did little to impede him as Zabuza simply jumped over them and dove into the water. Seeing their sensei get hit like that understandably left an impact on the 3 genin. Coming up for air, Kakashi took note that the water didn't feel right, like it was heavy or dense. However, he didn't have long to think about it as Zabuza ran up behind him. Ha! Fool! Zabuza mocked as he ran through hand signs. Once finished, he called out the name of his water prison jutsu and entrapped Kakashi in a sphere of water. Escaping into the water. Big mistake, Kakashi thought as he took in the position he was in. Hehehe, this prison is made of water but it's stronger than steel. It's hard to fight when you can't move. So much for the great Kakashi, Zabuza said with a low chuckle as he stared down at his trapped foe, his right hand sticking into the sphere to keep it stable. I'll finish you off later, but first, your little friends will have to be eliminated, the man said as he turned his attention back to the group. With a single hand, Zabuza summoned forth yet another water clone from the lake. He's even more skilled than I thought, Kakashi worriedly thought as Zabuza began to chuckle again. You think having a headband makes you a shinobi? When you've hovered between life and death so many times it doesn't even faze you, then you may be called a shinobi. When you've become so deadly your profile is entered into my bingo book, then you may have earned the title shinobi. But to call upstarts like your shinobi is a joke, the clone spoke before summoning forth more fog. This was bad, the genin couldn't fight Zabuza alone and Honoka needs to concentrate on the barrier if it's to survive an attack from the man. Looks like there's no other choice. Listen, take the bridge builder and run. You can't win this fight. He's using all of his power to keep me in this prison so he can only fight you with his water clone, but the clone can't go far from the real body. If you go far enough he can't follow, so run. Kakashi called out to the group. No, they couldn't just leave him. With his hands tightening around his kunai, Naruto was ready to take this guy on, but a hand coming to rest on his shoulder eased his anger. Honoka, what is it? The blonde asked as he looked over his shoulder at the woman. Without uttering a single word, the Uzumaki girl conveyed what was on her mind as the pair stared into one another's eyes. Got it. You want us to protect the bridge builder, Naruto said as he turned his head back forward. He wanted to get in on the action but this was their best option. We can't run away. We're dead if we run, Sasuke argued after hearing the blonde. Even with Honoka's protection it'd only be a matter of time before he got around her barrier, the Uchiha reasoned. Honoka was a skilled shinobi but this was beyond her capability. You said we're running, Naruto asked, getting odd looks from Sakura, Sasuke, and Tazuna. Turning to Tazuna, Honoka stared deeply into his eyes and while the bridge builder didn't have the advantage of shinobi training even he could tell what she wanted to say. I never hired you in the first place. I've no right to stop you if you want to help their sensei, Tazuna told the girl. With a warm smile she gave the man a nod before taking down the barrier. Turning to the water clone, Honoka once more put on a determined expression. So, finally going to fight are you? Zabuza asked as he stared the woman down. There's only ever been one Uzumaki to make it into my bingo book, the clone said as it reached up for its sword. Let's see how to stack up to Konoha's Red Death, Zabuza taunted her. Back with the original Zabuza. What are you doing? I told you to run. This fight was over the moment I got caught. Kakashi yelled out to the group. However his cries fell on deaf ears as Honoka charged the water clone. As the redhead approached the clone, Zabuza's Kubikiribocho came off his back. Leaning back, Honoka used her momentum to slide under the swinging blade. Once she was underneath him, her chains once more shot out from her body, using the large spikes at the end to impale the clone. As the clone turned to water and fell down on her, two more chains came out from her hip. Shooting out to the water's edge, they planted themselves into the earth and by pulling them back to her, Honoka was able to rapidly propel herself towards the real Zabuza. Clever, using her chakra chains to accelerate her body, Zabuza praised as Honoka reached the lake and took the chains out of the earth so they wouldn't slow her down. But, the man began as the teen flew across the water's surface, coming straight for him. A frontal attack like that won't work on me, Zabuza shouted as he swung his blade down, slicing Honoka right down the middle as she came within reach of his attack. With his victory evident, Zabuza grinned wildly under the bandages. However, something wasn't right. Time seemed to slow down as his blade passed off her body with ease, as if there was no resistance at all. When she continued to move forward and pass through his body, Zabuza's eyes widened. A genjutsu, the man wondered as the last of Honoka passed by. When did she? The man was trying to figure out when his sense of danger kicked in. In his line of work, even a split second of hesitation could cost you your life, and so the man leapt away. As he flipped through the air, a truly aggravating sight met his eyes. The danger he senses were the chakra chains coming out of Honoka's back, which would have run through him had he been there a second longer. But how? Damn it! How did she not die when he sliced through her? How did she pass through him? Is it some kind of ninjutsu? Damn you! Zabuza roared as he landed back on the water. Rushing the girl, he went to swing his large blade at her once more. Even if he had to cut her down 1,000 times over, he'd kill her. Before the Kubikiribocho could make contact with Honoka a second time, Kakashi had jumped in to block it with a kunai. With water still flowing down his body, Kakashi stared into Zabuza's eyes with his Sharingan. Honoka, You did good, but it's time you got back to the others. I'll handle it from here, Kakashi told the girl. With a nod, the teen ran around the two Junin and rushed back to the group, her and Zabuza's eyes meeting as she passed by. That's quite the technique she's got. Any normal shinobi would have stained my sword if they'd tried the same thing, Zabuza commented as his sword and Kakashi's kunai scrapped against each other. I'd let you in on the secret, but now isn't the time for ghost stories, Kakashi told the man. After another moment of the two glaring at one another passed, they jumped away as Zabuza put the Kubikiribocho back on his back. As soon as the rogue Kirigakure shinobi landed on the water, he was speeding through hand signs that Kakashi began to copy when he landed. Once finished, the pair called out in unison, "Water style, water dragon jutsu." With the jutsus complete, twin dragons rose from the lake, each one twisting and turning around the other before finally clashing and turning back to water, which rained down on the two shinobi and stirring up the water of the lake. Once more the two combatants clashed sword against kunai as the after effects of their jutsu continued to kick up waves in the lake. Something isn't right, Zabuza thought as he ran through what just happened in his head. The Sharingan can comprehend and replicate the enemy's technique, however, both jutsu occurred simultaneously. Could he? The man thought to himself. Breaking away again, the two stood opposite one another. Beginning to run in a circle, Zabuza watched as Kakashi followed his every move beat for beat, even coming to a stop at the same time he did and replicating his pose without hesitation. He's not just following, he's moving in the same way at the same time, Tazuna commented as they watched the fight. How's he doing that? How's Sasuke? Sakura asked but received no answer from the Uchiha. My movements, it's as if he knows what I'm, Zabuza was thinking when Kakashi spoke. What you are going to do next? The silver-haired shinobi finished Zabuza's thought. What? The man questioned with wide eyes as he stared at Kakashi. Is he reading my mind as well? Zabuza wondered. He looks at me with that eye, he thought as he stared into Kakashi's Sharingan. It makes you furious, doesn't it? Kakashi asked. Huh, all you are doing is copying me, like a monkey, Zabuza told him as he started on a new set of hand signs. You can't beat me with cheap tricks, I'll crush you, Zabuza and Kakashi said in unison, pissing Zabuza off. When I'm finished with you, you'll never open that monkey mouth again, Zabuza yelled. As they continued going through hand signs, a figure began to appear behind Kakashi. What is that? Zabuza wondered as it slowly took shape. Eventually the murky figure took his form. It's me, but how? Is it a genjutsu? The man wondered as Kakashi finished his jutsu. Water style, giant water vortex jutsu, Kakashi called out, stunning Zabuza as a stream of water came out of the lake and formed a ring in front of Kakashi. That ring quickly expanded till it was a giant surge of water that launched out towards Zabuza. Impossible, Zabuza cried out just before the water slammed into him. Carried along in the violent current, Zabuza wondered who Kakashi could use that jutsu first when he was just about to use it. He copies my jutsu before I can even do it. I can't keep up, Zabuza mentally shouted as the vortex ripped through the forest, carrying him with it before finally slamming high into the trunk of a tree and dying down. When the water receded and Zabuza started coughing and gasping for breath, several kunai flew through the air and pierced his arms and legs. In the branches above, Kakashi stared down at the man. You're finished, Kakashi told him. Shakily tilting his head up to look at the silver-haired man, Zabuza asked, How? Can you see into the future? Yes, Kakashi answered as he pulled out another kunai. This is your last battle, ever, Kakashi said, ready to finish the man off when two senbon needles shot through the air and embedded themselves into the rogue shinobi's neck. With stunned expressions, everyone turned to see who launched the sudden attack. Standing on the branch of a nearby tree stood a young woman about the same age as Naruto and the others. She wore a green hori with white trimmings that was held together by a brown sash with a fringed trail that she had wrapped twice around her slim waist. Under that were brown, stripped clothes that covered everything except for her hands and lower legs, with the bottom half of the clothing being very loose and baggy. Her sandals were light brown with green straps. Her long, black hair was gathered into a white bun holder with two locks remaining to frame her face while bound with metal hair cuffs at the ends. Covering her face was a white mask with curved, red markings over where her mouth would be and having curved slits for her to see out of. On the forehead of the mask was the symbol of Kirigakure etched into the material. Hamahe, you were right. It was his last battle, the new shinobi commented as Zabuza's body laid and moving on the ground. For a few moments the group just stared at her, a range of emotions running through them. Eventually Kakashi jumped down next to Zabuza's body to check for a pulse. No vital signs, Kakashi confirmed before his attention moved back to the masked shinobi. Thank you. I've been tracking Zabuza for a long time, waiting for this chance to finally take him down, the girl told him with a slight bow. Judging by your mask, I see you are a tracker shinobi from Kirigakure, Kakashi commented. Impressive, you're well informed, the girl said as she straightened back up. Running up closer to the masked girl, Naruto was struggling with what to do. Looking between her and Zabuza several times, his hands clenched into fists. He knew that Kakashi, his mother, the old pervert, they all devoted years of their lives to training before they were as strong as they are, but this girl just shows up and takes Zabuza down with one blow. Question mark. What is this? Who do you think you are? Naruto shouted as he pointed at the tracker, and for a moment they just stared at one another. Did you hear me? The blonde yelled again when a hand was placed on his shoulder. Turning his head to the side, he saw Honoka looking at him. Closing her eyes, she shook her head. This wasn't helping. Picking a fight with this person wouldn't benefit anyone. In this world, there are kids younger than you and yet stronger than me, Naruto heard Kakashi say as the man walked toward him. It was a fact hard for someone like Naruto to swallow, someone who desperately wanted to live up to the legacy of his ancestors, but it had to be done. As Naruto agitatedly turned his head to the side, the tracker moved from the branch to Zabuza's body in a swirl of wind and leaves. Lifting the man's body onto her shoulders, she once again turned to Kakashi. Your struggle is over for now. I must deal with the remains. There are many secrets in this body, they must not be allowed to get into the wrong hands. Please excuse me, farewell, she told them before vanishing in another gust of wind. As Honoka's grip tightened on Naruto's shoulder, Kakashi lowered his headband back over the Sharingan. Turning to the other, we haven't completed our mission yet. We still have to get the bridge builder to his bridge, Kakashi said with more of an upbeat tone. Sorry I caused so much trouble for ya, but you can rest at my house when we get there, Tazuna said with a laugh, feeling like he could walk on air now that Zabuza was dealt with. Okay, let's get a move on, Kakashi said as he turned to continue to Tazuna's house. He barely took a few steps before the strain of the battle took its effect and he collapsed to the ground, causing the others to panic. Opening his eye, the first thing Kakashi saw was the wood plank roof of the room he was put into rest. Laying in the futon, the man was covered up to his neck. I think I overdid it with my Sharingan, Kakashi thought with a groan. Waking up, are you alright? Hearing the question, Kakashi glanced over to his side to see a woman with long, black hair, a short-sleeved pink shirt with the ends of the sleeves and collar being red, and a long blue skirt staring down at him. I've been better. It'll be a week before I can move normally, Kakashi told her as he tried to sit up. See, it's better if you don't move, so just lay down, the woman advised with her hands on her hips. After a short moment of staring at the woman, Kakashi agreed and laid back down on the futon, followed shortly by his team and Tazuna walking into the room. Hey look, Kakashi-sensei's up, Naruto commented as they walked into the room. Listen sensei, Sakura began as she sat down next to Kakashi, your Sharingan is amazing, but if it puts that much of a strain on you, then maybe it's not worth it. Sorry, Kakashi apologized for overextending himself. Well, he did take down one of the most powerful shinobi assassins, so we'll be safe for a while, Tazuna commented as he wiped his face with the towel he always carried around his neck. Right, Sakura agreed with a bit of concern in her voice. That girl with the mask, what about her? The Pinkett asked. She's from the elite tracking unit of Kirigakure. Those masks are only worn by the most elite shinobi, Kakashi said. What exactly do they do? Sakura then asked. The Ambu Black Ops, also known as the Inferno Squad, destroy all trace of a rogue shinobi's corpse. The shinobi's body contains many secrets, ninjutsu, chakra, special medicines used on his body, these are the secrets of his village. If his enemies find them, his people will be in grave danger. For instance, If I were to die at the hands of an enemy, he'd try to analyze my Sharingan. In the worst case, my entire jutsu could be stolen and used against the village. It is the sacred duty of the shinobi tracker to prevent this and keep the village secrets safe. If a shinobi betrays their village, the tracker hunt them down, eliminate him, and obliterate every trace of their existence. That's their specialty, Kakashi explained. As the man was explaining, a nagging thought kept pestering him. What is this? If Zabuza is dead, then why do I feel this way? Something's wrong. It's like I missed something, Kakashi thought to himself. Is something wrong? Naruto asked, seeing the look on the man's face. Oh yeah, Kakashi said after being pulled from his thoughts. As I was saying, tracker shinobi deal with the body immediately, on the spot, so there is no room for error, Kakashi told them. Is that really important? Sakura asked. Think about it, remember what the tracker did with Zabuza's body. The Junin asked. We don't know what he did. I guess she took it away somewhere, Sakura answered. Exactly, but why? She should have worked on Zabuza right there, as quickly as possible, Kakashi told them. Think about the weapons she used for the takedown. Do you remember what they were? The man asked. Sasuke was the first to answer. Senbon needles, the Uchiha said as he realized what Kakashi was getting at and his eyes widened. Exactly, none of it adds up, Kakashi responded. What are you all yammering about? You demolished that assassin, Tazuna interjected. Here's the truth, Zabuza is still alive, Kakashi said, surprising everyone except for Sasuke and Honoka. But we saw his body, Naruto reasoned. Kakashi-sensei, you checked him yourself. You said that his heart stopped, Sakura added. His heart did stop, but that was just a temporary state to simulate death. The weapons the tracker used can pierce deeply, but rarely kill unless they hit a vital organ, not in the neck. They're modified from medical needles used in treatments like acupuncture. Trackers are trained to know every detail of the human body. Causing the heart to stop temporarily while keeping the body alive is a simple task for them. First, she carried Zabuza's body away even though it's much heavier than she is. Second, she used Senbon, which have a precise effect but are rarely fatal. From these two factors we can conclude that the tracker wasn't trying to kill Zabuza, but save him, Kakashi told them. Come on, you are overthinking this, aren't you? Tazuna asked, not wanting to believe what he was hearing. Encountering suspicion, a shinobi prepares quickly, hesitation leads to disaster. Every shinobi knows this saying, Kakashi said as his eye darted over to Naruto. By the look on the blonde's face, he was excited to hear that Zabuza was alive. Perhaps this time he'll get to show what he can do. So with you out of commission, we'll have to rely on Honoka. Tazuna questioned. The girl may not have fought for long, but she certainly held her own. With her skills, they should be sa. That's not a preferable position to be in. Honoka can't sustain a long fight with her level of training, and after rescuing me from the water prison, they'll know not to use physical attacks on her. If it came down to a one-on-one fight, I'm not sure she'd be able to protect you, Kakashi bluntly told the bridge builder. Well, if we can't rely on just Honoka, then what are we supposed to do? Sakura asked. After a few chuckles, Kakashi told her, just because I have to rest my body doesn't mean I can't train you. This came as a surprise to the Pinkett and she made sure to voice it. Now hold on, Kakashi-sensei. A little bit of last-minute training won't prepare us for Zabuza. That may be true, but after that fight Zabuza will undoubtedly need as much time to recover as I do. Between now and then you'll train so that you can better support me while we have our rematch. On top of that, we can expect his accomplice to take part in the fight now that we know they're working together. If you are undertrained, then you risk the lives of both yourself and those we're here to protect, Kakashi tells the girl. Right, Naruto exclaims after Kakashi had finished. We'll get stronger and protect the bridge builder. Everything's going to be alright, believe it. The blonde continued with a grin and was immediately followed after by a new voice. I don't believe it, and nothing's going to be alright. A young boy standing in the doorway said. The kid wore a green jumpsuit with a yellow shirt and a simple pair of sandals. On his head sat a white bell-shaped hat with two blue stripes on it. He had short spiky brown hair that poked out from under his hat and dark-colored eyes. Ga, Anari, where have you been? Tazuna greeted the boy as he threw his arms out. Welcome back, Grandpa. Anari cheered as he rushed over to hug the old man. Walking over to her son, Tsunami once more placed her hands on her hips as she stared down at the boy. Anari, that was very rude. These shinobi helped your grandpa and brought him here safely, the woman scolded her son. It's okay, it's okay. I'm rude to them too, Tazuna commented as he patted Anari's head. After taking another long look at the shinobi, Anari turned to his mother. Mom, don't you see? These people are all going to die. Geto and his men will come back, find them, and wipe them out. The boy told his mother. What did you say, brat? Naruto questioned as he shot up to his feet. Listen up, do you know what a super shinobi is? That's me, only a lot better. This Geto guy is no match for a real hero like me. Naruto told the kid. Ha, there's no such thing as a hero, Anari scoffed as the rim of his hat hid his eyes. You're just full of stupid ideas, the boy said as he raised his head to stare at the blonde. Naruto was about to storm over and get in the kid's face, but Honoka's hand grabbing the bottom of his jacket quickly put an end to that idea. If you want to stay alive, you should go back where you came from, Anari said before he turned to walk away. Anari, wait, where are you going? Tazuna asked the boy. To look out at the ocean. I want to be alone, the boy answered before leaving the room. Turning to their quests, Tazuna apologized for Inari's behavior. A little later, Naruto was making his way upstairs. He didn't care if the kid was the client's grandson, he was going to knock some sense into him. Once he got to the second floor and started to make his way down the hall, the blonde began to hear something he hadn't expected, the sound of someone crying. Approaching Anari's room, Naruto peeked in through the slightly open door. What he saw was Anari sitting on the wooden desk in front of his window that looked over the ocean. In his hands was a small photo frame with a picture of a man that looked to have been torn from a larger image. As tears ran down his face and dropped onto the frame, Anari softly cried out for his father. Seeing this, the anger Naruto had felt moment earlier just washed away. Lowering his head, the blonde just turned and headed back down the hall. However, he was not the only one to overhear Inari's sadness. Above the boy's window, looking out at the vast ocean, Honoka sat on the roof with her arms wrapped around her knees. This land has lost so much. We have to help them, the red-haired woman thought as buried her face in her knees. She was powerless once to stop a horrible evil from destroying so many innocent lives. She didn't want to see something like that ever happen again. Later that day had Kakashi walking around with the aid of crutches. And with his ability to walk around, the man had led his 3 students out into the woods. Alright, training begins now, Kakashi told the 3 after he'd found a suitable location. First, we will begin with a review of chakra, a shinobi's basic source of power. Understanding chakra is essential, Kakashi told them. We know that, Sasuke told the man, finding an explanation unnecessary. Yeah, mom drills it into my head all the time, Naruto told the man as he crossed his arms over his chest. Is that so? Kakashi asked them. Then surely you are already aware of the tree climbing exercise, correct? The man questioned. This is where the 2 of them faltered. The tree climbing exercise, Naruto questioned while Sasuke turned his head with a humph. Despite being from 2 historically powerful clans, the pair had yet to enter into more advanced chakra training. Aside from the leaf exercise all academy students are shown, it doesn't seem like they've even touched the subject. This should make the fact that they can use more advanced jutsu such as shadow clones or the fireball jutsu even more impressive, but perhaps it should be chalked up to luck. When performing a jutsu, one combines both their physical energy and their spiritual energy. Each jutsu requires a different mix of proportions to work. Up till now you've only been guessing. Even if you produce a lot of chakra, if you can't balance and control it, it's all worthless. Either the jutsu won't work or it'll just be a joke. You waste so much energy that way and then you are out of chakra and you can't fight at all. You are just a target, Kakashi explained. So how do we fix that? Naruto asked. Train so hard that controlling your chakra becomes second nature, Kakashi tells them. So what do we have to do? The Pinkett asked. Simple, climb a tree, Kakashi answered with a smile. Obviously this was a surprise for the genin as they questioned what he told them. Well, There is one catch. You're not allowed to use your hands, the man told them. What? You were kidding, Sakura commented after hearing that. Am I? Let's see, Kakashi responded as he turned and walked towards the closest tree. Before the tree's very eyes, the man walked straight up the trunk as if he was strolling down the tree, even coming to stand upside down on one of the branches. Well, you get the idea. Focus your chakra towards the soles of your feet and use it to connect to the tree. This is one way to apply the power of chakra, Kakashi explained. What a minute, Sakura called out. That's a nice trick, sensei, but how is it going to help us fight Zabuza? The pink cat asked. It's the only way to fight him, Sakura, Kakashi quickly responded. That's the whole point of this training. First you learn to focus a precise amount of chakra to a precise point in the body. This type of climbing requires a subtle mix of physical and spiritual energy, and the bottom of the feet are the most difficult to focus chakra to. Are you getting the picture? If you can master this, then you will be able to master any jutsu. Kakashi told them before adding at the end, well, theoretically. The second point is to maintain chakra levels. In battle it's even harder to maintain and control chakra levels, a deadly mistake. To avoid this, maintaining chakra must become second nature. Effortless, the man told them. Well, I could go on all day, but that won't advance your skills now, will it? You need to apply the power of chakra through training, Kakashi said as he pulled out 3 kunai and tossed them to his students' feet. Use the kunai to mark the tree at the highest point you can climb, without using your hands. Then try to get past that mark the next time, and the next. At first you'll need to run at the tree so your momentum will take you as high as possible, until you get used to it. Ready, Kakashi instructed them. Elsewhere, among the islands that make up Wave, a large cone-shaped building was located among many large trees. This building was Geto's main hub for his illegal activities within the small island nation. It was here that Zabuza was recovering. Sitting beside his bed, Haku watched over her master, her face no longer hidden behind her mask. She had delicate features and deep, caring brown eyes. Hearing the doors creak open, the girl looked over her shoulder to see Geto stroll into the room accompanied by 2 of his thugs. Both of them claimed to have had samurai training in the past, and both of them lacked any honor. Some Junin, the unbeatable shinobi, just got beat. Limping back home like some pathetic has-been, the corrupt businessman remarked. Demon of the hidden mist, ha ha ha, more like coward of the hidden mist, the short man insulted. Hearing this, Haku stood up, the wooden chair she'd been sitting in clattering against the stone floor as Geto's thugs reached for their blades. Drawing swords, Haku asked as she watched the men from over her shoulder. Honestly, it was more amusing than anything else. Hang on a minute, Geto instructed his men as he walked by them. Alright, let's hear what you have to say about this fiasco, Geto said as he walked up to Zabuza's bed. And don't play possum. I know you can talk, Geto said as he reached out for the man, only to wince in pain when Haku grabbed hold of his arm. Keep your filthy hands off of him. Haku lowly growled out as she glared daggers at the man and squeezed just a bit harder. A-A-A-A-A-A-G-H. You are gonna break it, the man shouted. Seeing the guy who writes their checks in danger, the 2 samurai thugs drew their swords and rushed the girl. However, they were unprepared for her speed and skill as they were quickly disarmed and had the tips of their own blades brushing up against their throats. Don't push me, I'm in a really foul mood, Haku warned before tossing the swords to the other side of the room. As Geto and his men backed off towards the door, he made one last warning. One chance, that's it. If you fail this time, I'll cut you off and then there'll be no one left to cover for you. The man yelled before leaving with his hired men. Haku, that wasn't necessary, Zabuza told the teen once they were alone. Under the blanket he held a kunai in his hand, having been fully prepared to plunge it into Geto's throat. Perhaps, but it's too early to take out Geto, Haku argued. He's still our best cover. Think about it, the murders would draw their attention. Then they'd be after us again, Haku said, referring to actual tracker shinobi from Kirigakure. We need restraint, the girl told him with a smile. Ugh, right, Zabuza reluctantly agreed as he closed his eyes and tried to rest. The moment Geto no longer served a purpose, he was a dead man. Tsunami was a stay-at-home mother. She tended to the house, prepared everyone's meals, and made sure her son and grandfather looked presentable before they went out in public. Today, she had nothing to do. It was actually quite common actually. There was only so much she could clean or rearrange before having nothing to do. She considered getting a job in the past, but Anari was still a bit too young for her to comfortably leave him alone all day. Then you had the fact that even if she got a job, it'd never pay enough to make the daily trip to the town worth it. She'd picked up a few hobbies over the years such as gardening and origami to whittle away the hours, but today she was fighting off boredom thanks to the blonde shinobi staying in her house. Like everyone, she had heard the tales of shinobi who could breathe fire or scale walls and toss boulders 5 times their size, but it still took her by surprise when Naruto made a duplicate of himself before heading out with his team. Honoka and the clone had then set up a space inside the house where they could work. As Tsunami had walked around the house looking for something to do, she'd keep walking by the room they were in, and every time she'd see that more and more scrolls and ink bottles had piled up around them. After hours of letting her curiosity building up to a boil, Tsunami finally had enough. After making a pot of tea to use as an excuse, the woman made her way over to the pair. "Wow, this is really good," Naruto complimented after taking a sip of the tea Tsunami brewed. The blonde hadn't been expecting the woman to offer them something to drink like this, but he couldn't say he was unhappy with it. "Thank you. We don't have much to work with, so I try to make the most of it," Tsunami told him as she poured her own cup, having joined the pair in sitting on the floor. Looking around them, Tsunami once more had her attention drawn to the scrolls laying on the floor. Looking closely, she could tell that, despite the weird design, every scroll seemed to have the same design on it. Reaching over, Tsunami picked one up. The first thing she noticed about it was how warm the paper was. "Why was it so warm? What have you been working on?" the woman asked as she ran a finger over the dried ink. Looking from Tsunami's face, to the scroll in her hands, and then back up to her face as he leaned back on his hands, Naruto figured it wouldn't hurt to tell her. "Funjutsu practice," Naruto told the woman. Having expected the confused look she gave him, Naruto gave her a wide grin and elaborated, "Funjutsu is a form of shinobi art that uses written formulas, kanji, and other symbols to perform some kind of action. The most common use for Funjutsu is to seal an object into another object. Like putting a sleeping bag inside a scroll." The explanation sounded unbelievable to her, but Tsunami understood what the blonde was saying. "So you are learning how to use Funjutsu then?" the woman asked with a smile. Naruto gave her a nod before saying, "Yeah, moms had me memorize at least one seal a week for about a year now. Before that it was daily calligraphy lessons that she had me do since I was just a kid." "That's quite a lot for someone your age," Tsunami commented. When she was his age, she didn't have the slightest idea what she wanted out of life. Hell, she was just barely twice his age and she still didn't quite know what she wanted. "You think?" Naruto asked as he sat up straight. Everyone he knew that was around his age put in a lot of work. "Oh yes. When I was your age, I just spent every day wandering around town getting free handouts from boys who thought I looked pretty. I just thought of hard work as being something for older people, something I didn't have to worry about until I was an adult," the woman admitted, placing the scroll in her lap and tilting her head back to stare at the ceiling as she reminisced about her youth. Letting out a sigh as she closed her eyes, she added, "Sometimes I wonder how father put up with me." Grabbing his cup, Naruto brought it up and took another sip. Holding his cup a few inches below his chin, Naruto commented with a big grin, "Well, you are petty." While Naruto had meant it as a harmless compliment, hearing someone half her age call her pretty was quite the surprise. With flushed cheeks, Tsunami began to chuckle nervously. "Oh, come on now. You don't need to flatter an old woman like me." "But it's true. You're really pretty," Naruto told her and watched with a bit of confusion as more of Tsunami's face turned red. She'd never admit it, but having Naruto call her pretty was quite the ego boost, even if it was embarrassing. Looking to her other side, Tsunami worried about how she must look right now. Even without looking in a mirror, she knew her face was completely red after that. Though, her embarrassment was soon forgotten when she noticed that Honoka was holding her ceramic cup with both hands and staring down at her own reflection. The look on the girl's face was, to best describe it, odd. Is something wrong? Tsunami asked, her face returning to its normal hue. Widening her eyes, Honoka's head jerked up to look at Tsunami. Shaking her head enough for her bangs to fly about her face, Honoka gave the woman a big smile before drinking from her cup. Lowering the cup, Honoka let out a blissful sigh. It really was delicious. Tsunami was still a little concerned with the look she saw on Honoka, but seeing her act like this he smiled back on her face as she chuckled ever so slightly. You don't talk too much, do you? The woman offhandedly remarked, finding it cute in a way. Hearing her say that, Honoka looked at Tsunami for a moment before a thoughtful look spread across her face. Looking straight ahead at Naruto, the girl looked him in the eyes as she gave him a sharp nod. It took Naruto a moment to understand what she was trying to say, but after living with her for months now, he was positive he knew what she was thinking. Are you sure you can't change your mind once I tell her? Naruto asked the girl to make sure she was serious about this. Honoka's response was another nod. Seeing their interaction, Tsunami couldn't help her curiosity. Tell me what? The woman asked. Everyone has their secrets, but honestly, you can't just tease her like that and expect her not to ask. Both of them turned towards Tsunami and stared at her intently. If Tsunami was honest with herself, it was a bit off-putting. Tell me, are you scared of ghosts? Naruto eventually asked. Ghosts? They wanted to know if she was scared of ghosts. Blinking in confusion, Tsunami responded, No. I can't say I was ever really scared of ghosts. Really? What are they trying to get at with this? If they were trying to pull some prank, then it's not particularly funny. After a moment, Naruto nodded his head with a right. Placing his hands on his folded legs, Naruto looked Tsunami squarely in the eye and told her, Please don't freak out, but Honoka is a ghost. For a few long moments not a sound passed between the three, until PHFF. Hehehehe. Tsunami tried to hold back her laughter, but at the end she failed horribly. This quiet girl sitting within an arm's reach was supposed to be a ghost. Tsunami just couldn't wrap her mind around it. Seriously, whoever heard of a ghost just walking around in broad daylight like any normal person? Hey, I'm being serious here, Naruto blurted out, both him and Honoka having become annoyed at seeing Tsunami burst into laughter. I'm sorry, I just can't help myself. Tsunami apologized, threatening to fall over as her sides started to hurt from the laughter. As Naruto crossed his arms and started grumbling, Honoka let out a sigh as her hand came up to rest on her forehead and for her fingers to partially rend her. Ow, her hair. As she thought about it, the corners of her lips curved upward. At least it was better than fear. Oh, okay. I think I'm good now, Tsunami said after a few more minutes of laughing, wiping a tear from her eye as she sat up straight again. Okay, let's assume I believe you. Honoka here is a ghost, and that means what, exactly? The woman questioned. Well, Naruto began as his hand came up to scratch at his cheek. Since she was a ghost, there are some differences between her and a living person. For one example, since she doesn't have a body, she doesn't necessarily need to sleep, so most nights she's up wandering around the house or walking through the streets to keep her mind occupied. Though, right now the biggest thing Tsunami should know would probably be, it's hard for her to talk, nah. Naruto told the woman. Hard to talk? Why would being a ghost make it hard for her to talk? Tsunami asked. She's heard plenty of ghost stories that talked about all the creepy things the spirits would say. I think it's like this. You and I have physical bodies, so we don't have to put a lot of energy into talking because we have, what was it called? Right. We have vocal cords to help us talk. Honoka doesn't have a physical body, so normal things we do without even thinking about it, like talking. Honoka has to do with spiritual energy, making it a lot harder, Naruto explained, doing his best to recall what Tsunade had told them after she had given Honoka a checkup. Did that make any sense? The blonde then added after a moment. I think I get it, Tsunami responded. She still had no idea if they were telling the truth, but that didn't really matter. Turning to